I'm Sandy Meiskens, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, Marquette County. Welcome to this League of Women Voters Candidate Forum featuring the 6 candidates running in the primary election for representative of the 109th District of Michigan. The Marquette County chapter of the League of Women Voters is sponsoring this forum in partnership with the Marquette chapter of the American Association of University Women. For almost 104 years, the League has engaged and educated voters through candidate forums, voter registration drives, and voter guides. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization established to encourage citizen participation in government. It never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. We offer you this opportunity to become acquainted with the candidates and their views in order to promote an informed vote on Election Day. The AAUW is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to advancing gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy with a vision for equity for all. We request that the members of the audience remain respectful of the candidates and the forum format. Please turn off your cell phones and refrain from taking photographs or recordings during the forum. No campaign clothing, buttons, or signage are permitted during the forum. To provide the maximum time for questions, we request that you hold your applause and any comments for the candidates until the conclusion of the forum. This forum is being live streamed and recorded to the League YouTube channel with a link to the channel on our Facebook page and website. We will get to our program in just a minute, but first we take this opportunity to extend an invitation to you to support the League or to become a member. The program that you are attending is a part of our mission, as I mentioned before. We are a volunteer organization and rely on dues and donations to make these programs and projects possible. We invite you to financially support this and our other League events. We have a strong working membership and board, but it takes you, a whole community, to achieve our mission. At the end of the program, we will have flyers available for both donations and memberships, and I believe that on the way in, you got one of these. So you can use this and drop it off or use it to mail it in. Thank you again for attending today's program. The forum will now begin, and with me, will you please welcome the candidates.
Good evening, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Forum featuring the candidates for the primary election for representative of the 109th District of Michigan. I'm Jo Foley, moderator for this evening and a member of the League of Women Voters and a resident in the 109th District. What we're doing is working on our timer, which was working just fine a little bit ago, and it will very shortly. I'm going to continue. State House legislators serve 2-year terms and are term limited after 6 terms. The responsibilities of state legislators include creating bills and passing laws, levying taxes, appropriating funds, and oversight of the expenditures of state tax dollars. There are 6 candidates on the ballot. The candidate in each party receiving the most votes will be that party's candidate in the general election on November 8th. We have 5 candidates with us today, and in order from my left, in the order that they will be speaking are Randy Gerard, Bert Mason, Margaret Brum, Jen Hill, and Melody Wagner. Carl Bonack is also on the ballot. He had an event scheduled for today that he was unable to change. He has sent in a statement that I will be reading later. There may be a seventh candidate on the ballot. George Meister withdrew, but after the deadline to remove his name from the ballot. He has assured us that he is not running. So if you see his name on the ballot, probably don't want to vote for him. Okay. To my left is Ruth Zeal. She's my assistant moderator. We have a team of over 30 people that have put this forum together. So I thank them very, very much. Okay. How are we doing on the timer? We're working on it. Okay. I want to explain the format for this evening. It is somewhat different from TV presidential debates. The format has been established by the League of Women Voters over years. So these are the rules that the candidates have agreed to. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement, 1.5 minutes for each question, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Earlier this evening, our candidates drew numbers for the order in which they will respond. The first candidate responding will be rotated for each response. Each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to each of the questions. Our timekeeper, Barb, will hold up a warning signs, 30-second, 15-second warning signs, and then a stop sign at the end of the time. When our timer's working, you'll be able to see it on the screen, we hope. We'll work on that. At the end of the time, I will then move the question to the next candidate. The candidates will be answering written questions submitted previously by voters in the 109th District and by you guys, audience members, tonight. The questions themselves may be combined or reworded for clarity or to avoid redundancy. We'll use as many questions as time allows. We had a tremendous response to our request for questions. We already have nearly 100 questions. We will not be asking all those questions. We have sorted them by topic, and what we want to do is to at least cover all the most asked topics. So if you don't hear your particular question, you should at least hear a question on the topic. Live streamers can still add to the numbers via the League's email, which is lwvmqtco@gmail.com. Our email is being monitored by a member at the screener's table as we talk. This forum is being live streamed and recorded to the League of Women Voters of Marquette County YouTube channel. That's how you find it. Links for the live stream and the recorded forum are on our website and Facebook page. Still photos may also appear on those sites. The candidates are not allowed to use audio or video from the forum in campaign material or advertising. We are very lucky and happy that we have two of our local TV stations that are recording and live streaming to their websites and news apps, if I have that correct. This is WZMQ and WLUC. No. Yes.
WJMN.
JMN, sorry, I know. WLUC was doing interviews earlier, sorry. Okay. How are we doing? Okay. Excuse us, folks. Totally restart. It really was working. Several times.
For me too.
Yes. Thank you. Don't you just love technology? Life stops, right, for the computers. It is. Really?
I was just saying, if everybody shut their eyes, I'll then it would work.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Does everyone have their phones on, looking at Safari or something? Okay. It's just being slow. do you have a watch with a? Okay, we're gonna start. You won't be seeing the time just yet. Hopefully we'll have that fixed. Barb is very reliable. Let's turn this on. Barb is very reliable. She will still time this. Okay, we're going to start the forum. We welcome this evening's candidates who are sitting in the order in which they respond as determined by lot. We will begin with opening statements, starting with candidate Gerard. You have the floor for 1 minute.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. This is very gratifying to see all of you this interested in the electoral process coming. I am asking for your opportunity to send me to Lansing to represent you. It would be essentially hiring me on a 2-year contract. I say a contract because my obligation as your representative would be to take your interests and your issues to Lansing to try and convince the other 109 representatives to act accordingly for the UP and for the 109th District. To do that, I am offering you 50 years of hands-on experience here in the 109th, incorporating county management, township management, school district management, hospital management, and airport management. I've done all of those things over the last 50 years. I spent 19 years as a senior manager for Marquette County government, served 2 years elected to county commissioner. I spent 20 years right here in this township as the manager, just recently retiring almost 4 years ago. And
I'm afraid your time is up.
oh, good. Just
Thank
like that.
you. You'll have more things to say. We will, candidate Mason, you now have the floor for 1 minute.
Hi, I'm Bert Mason. I'm living in Barrier County, and yes, thank you for showing up. I think most people would agree that we have a bloated and dysfunctional government, serving the special interest groups instead of we the people. The partisan divide has become so great in Lansing that they've lost focus on us. Okay, too many people are hurting due to the government policies that exist today. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford a house, rent, or even childcare. We're losing access to good health care up here. Our education system is broken. Energy and grocery prices are out of control. My background is national sales manager for Sony, international business development manager for a company called Autocon, and a product manager for Hexagon, gives me the skills necessary to work with other people and resolve these problems. These other skills I bring to the table, that's why I'm running. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Candidate Ram, you now have the floor for 1 minute.
Good evening. It's great to see all of you here. I'm treating this like any other job interview, so I'm starting with my most relevant skills and experience. I'm a chemical engineer from Michigan Tech. I know way too much about sewage treatment. Therefore, I will be able to share with you and with the people in Lansing the needs of sewage treatment, including septic tanks, which are right now the #1 polluter of inland lakes. I also have experience in public utilities relating to the energy system. I currently sit as the Vice Chair Secretary of the Marquette Board of Light and Power. I have other skill sets. I'm very active in the local government. I'm the person who started the recycle program for cigarette butts in the city of Marquette. I'm here to offer myself as a candidate for this job because I know I can do it, and I promise you that when you elect me, I will deliver for you goods and services for what you paid for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Hill, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you to the League. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this important event and to everyone watching for your attention. I am Representative Jen Hill, and it's been my great honor to serve as the voice of the Central Upper Peninsula in our state capital. The last 18 months have been one of the most productive periods in Michigan history. I'm proud of the work we have done to uplift Michigan residents with changes like the repeal of the retirement tax, protection of reproductive rights, restoring workers' rights, and expanding veteran services. Working with Governor Whitmer, I'm excited to bring home millions of dollars in revenue sharing for our local governments, as well as dramatically increasing school aid funding without increasing taxes. In the budget we approved this week, we are sending millions back to the Central UP for vital infrastructure, flood damage relief, and our cultural heritage. I'm happy to be here with my fellow candidates tonight, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Candidate Wagner, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. League of Women Voters, thank you for having me back again. Marquette Township, thank you for having this venue for us. And I especially want to thank you voters who have come out over the years and voted for me. I've won the Republican nomination 3 times now, in 18, 20, and 22. In 18 and 20, I did that with all my own finances. I did not trust our government. I did not trust the PACs, lobbyists, and the lawyers running the legislators and telling them what to do. In 22, if you don't know, with the redistricting, I lost Lucent Schoolcraft, had to take on Baraga and a 2/3 part of Dickinson County to the east. I'm running, and I'm gonna have to skip that because we're at a minute. Most of you have known me, heard the commercials and everything. I've had people cry with me, pray with me. They've left the state, they've been disgusted, they've been devastated like my life was devastated to make me run. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes opening statements. We will now proceed with the question segment. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. And it looks like we're working off a different timer that you can't see, but I trust these folks. Okay. The candidate Mason will start with you on the first question. And the question is this: what do you understand to be the most pressing issue for our district, and how would you propose the issue should be addressed?
One of the most pressing issues for our district is in fact health care. It may not be the most important, or I shouldn't even say that. It is a very important issue, but there are several issues. Education is a major issue. Health care is a major issue. And for those reasons, how do you solve it? The solutions are variable, and that we are now we're now in a state of flux. I hear about all the taxes that we're not spending or that we aren't increasing. I hear about all the infrastructure, but we are not keeping up with the Lower Peninsula. The Lower Peninsula is getting the bulk of our funding, the bulk of our funding. That's the biggest problem. We are not being well represented here in the Upper Peninsula, in the 109th. They've taken away our zoning rights throughout the whole state, but here in the UP, we had zoning rights that we, in fact, took over and stopped wind turbines and those types of things.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine. Same question to candidate Brum.
Candidate Brum has been listening to people all over the 109th and further, and the #1 issue in the 109th is affordable housing. People want to come here, they want to live here, and most people, for example, who work in the city of Marquette simply cannot find a place to live within the city of Marquette. I've sat through years of city commission meetings, years of development, years of planning commission meetings. My proposal, which I put on video before, is that the government partner with a 501c3 corporation, Habitat for Humanity, and provide funding to support the building of 10 new houses in each county in the state of Michigan. That's the first step in the process because they have the tools and the skills, and they have delivered housing to people who work for it. Another opportunity is for the government to commit for each county to build what I call villages of little homes. You can now buy these, basically you can buy these things off of Amazon, put them together into clusters of villages, and as long as the government sets up the utilities and the other things that are needed, you can put about 20 people in a cluster of property that normally wouldn't have maybe 1 or 2 houses. And the third opportunity is we have to balance the wages paid with the rents paid. And that's a long-term goal, but if you don't pay people enough to live here, they're not going to be here to work here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. I agree. The most pressing issue is housing. What we have done in the past 18 months is begin to take a regional approach. This is not something that's going to be solved in our individual communities. It's something that we are going to work together on. I'm glad to say that I've helped support a project called the Target Market Analysis. The state's provided funding to support this work. They identified the need for over 1,000 homes to be built, 1,000 units of housing. That includes condos and apartments, working with the Lake Superior Community Partnership to do that work, and our Central Regional Planning Agency. We also worked, there's funding from the state at Invest UP, over $10 million to help support housing development. The State Housing Authority received last year for the first time in our state budget $50 million that has gone to down payment support for people, especially those first-time homeowners who have such a hard time getting in to our housing. We also need more workers and training workers, and through skilled apprenticeships with our unions and high schools. And then finally, the zoning question, which is up to the local folks. And City of Marquette has changed its zoning to allow more types, as has some of our other communities. So the folks in the UP are stepping up to the challenge, and the state is there to partner with them.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner.
Well, I was going to say the first thing on my platform, which was accountability and transparency and ethics in government. But with the recent passing just this week by the Senate, overwhelmingly, with the Sunshine Bill to Senator McBroom and Jeremy Moss, Democrat senator, put those forth, and they got passed overwhelmingly, like by a lot, like 32-2 or something like that. And that's going to remain. The House still has to pass that. They're on the summer break now. And that opens a FOIA for our governor and our legislation. I couldn't believe that when I started running and knew this was one of 2 states in the nation that didn't have sunshine laws and proper accountability and transparency. But the number one reason right now, the number one problem, the number one complaint is inflation, inflation, and inflation. Cost of everything has gone up. Groceries, gas, electric, our astronomical car insurance, twice the national average. And our pay scales here in the UP remain lower than downstate. They remain lower than our neighbors, Wisconsin, and we lose our trained folks like law enforcement, correction officers, nurses, and teachers go somewhere else to work because it's more affordable and they can live there and actually pay their bills. So inflation is the number one complaint right now on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Gerard.
From the people I talk with, the number one issue that I hear is economic freedom and viability. The question of whether or not you can operate a household, raise a family on the current level of income that is available. Michigan's an extremely expensive state to live in. We rank 37th out of 50 in terms of cost. We have high taxes, we have high fees, we have very restrictive business climate. We have people leaving the state because of that. And that is, to me, the number one issue. If you don't have economic freedom and viability, you cannot afford health insurance, you can't send your kids off to school, you can't do a variety of things. The solution lies in the state's budget. You just heard today that the governor passed an $84 billion budget, $1.6 billion higher than last year, which was the highest budget ever passed. Not any of that went to middle-income families or low-income families, from what I can see in looking at the budget. It went to a variety of other things, as Representative Hill had mentioned, but nothing that helps us. And that's all that I need in my minute and a half.
Thank you. We'll now go to the next question, and that will start with candidate Brum. The question is, what do you feel are the reasons that legislation to ease the dark store tax situation have not moved forward, and how would you overcome these obstacles?
The number one reason the dark store tax issue has not been resolved is that by its very nature, courts of law are designed to move slower than the legislative and the executive branch. It's very frustrating to people. They see a problem, they think it should be readily resolved. But one of the things I learned in law school is that a tax attorney's job is to reduce the tax burden as much as possible for their client. In fact, it's malpractice if you don't take advantage of every possibility. Now, this particular dark store has been devastating for places that have large, big box stores that suddenly go out of business and all their tax revenue goes away. There's no doubt the fairness of it is not on the side of the store owner. However, it's in the courts, and the courts have their own timeline for moving and, I almost said moving and grooving, but they have their own timeline for movement. The only thing I can say, and this is also part of my video platform, is this. There needs to be a concerted effort by more than one township that has lost effort to bring into a class action suit where you name the stores that are routinely doing this sort of thing to townships, and you go after them in a bunch, because the rules are different for class actions. And I hope that eventually the townships get together and pay the legal fees and get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. Yes, it's cost the Upper Peninsula hundreds of thousands of dollars. Entities like our library have had to write checks to billion-dollar corporations like Lowe's. Dark stores has made a significant impact. This week, I submitted a bill along with my colleagues to address the dark stores issue. The reason it's taken this long is that unfortunately it went all the way up to our Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found that the current way that the tax tribunal does its business is legal. So it's been really challenging to deal with that when it's gone all the way to the Supreme Court. What we have done is I have filed jointly with Representatives Brixey and Representative Markkinen, who represents the 110th. He is part of this bill package, and we are changing the definitions of how assessing is done. We're taking it out at the root. And those bills, we had a lot of legal wrangling to get to that point. And so I expect a lot of work on this in the fall, and hopefully get passage soon. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What do you feel are the reasons that legislation to ease the dark store tax situation have not moved forward, and how would you overcome these obstacles?
The reasons is a corruption of Lansing with the legislation back in the day when these were brought forward. And they started up here in the UP. And once you understand the lobbyists and the lawyers that were controlling the legislators, when this started in Indiana and Wisconsin, they shut it down. But up here in the UP, this tax tribunal, which I don't know everything and what they've worked on and trying to push forward. If you go to my site, melodywagnerforstate.com, I've got dark store theories still on there. And it's been on there since I made my site in 2018. And it goes into detail under my platform, and you got to drop down, and it goes into our concerns. And that has been a concern since I've been running. And I would like a federal investigation as to how and why the corruption took over, and we didn't get results like the states of Indiana and Wisconsin did. I will do everything I can to bring those monies back that need to be up here and are supposed to be up here that we were already afforded. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Gerard.
2010 started the dark stores issue. It occurred in Detroit, and it was when Detroit had lost a large portion of its population and several big box stores closed down and moved out to the suburbs. They put rental restrictions on the buildings. They could not be used in a competing business. That is what reduced their taxable value. They were no longer available for use in that business. 2012, Marquette Charter Township and Brighting Township filed the first legal action for the dark stores issue. In correction, this township alone has lost over $12 million in tax revenue as a result of it. Not thousands, not hundred thousands, 12 million. And that was as of August of 2020, 4 years ago. It's been compounding ever since. The reason it's continuing is because you have legislators in Lansing that are career-oriented. They are lifetime legislators, and the Michigan Chamber of Commerce wields a large club on them being reelected. That is the problem with dark stores. It's not legal, It's the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. And until the legislature gets enough guts to take on that group, it will continue. That's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Mason.
Yes, I think most of it's been said, but certainly we have to change the way the dark stores are assessed, and the legislators need to take a close look at it. They need to stop worrying about getting reelected, because that's what's driving most of this problem. Changing how they get assessed, we welcome them into our communities, we welcome these stores into our communities, and then they leave and drop us like a hot potato. As he said, the $12 million that we're losing in tax revenue is unacceptable. So it's time, and as a legislator for the 109th, I would certainly go after that. Convincing other legislators to do the same would be my task, and I'm kind of good at that, so I don't need the full minute and a half.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question now, and that will start with candidate Hill. The question, I just want to say, we know these questions are anonymous, but we do know that this came from a young voter, and we're trying to make sure that we get youth voters' voice heard. The question is, America's competitors are heavily investing in green energy. How would you support green energy development in Michigan?
So, green energy development, we have passed a bill that just passed a law this past year that allowed for we set a target, a goal, that in 16 years we'll have green energy for all of our uses. That is a combination of many different kinds of energy, because you need to let the market lead and decide at what technology we need. So there's the way in which the market is going to lead on this. Supporting that market development is the enormous amount of funding that's available right now in the federal government through the Inflation Reduction Act and other pieces of legislation. And so it's a marriage of the development that's happening in the private sector. We're looking out the window at solar panels right here in Marquette Township, and making sure that the business people who want to start using this new technology have all the resources and tools available. There's also property income tax PACE, it's called, that property tax incremental financing that will allow you to put these panels up on your business and pay for it long-term on your property taxes. So it's a combination of innovation, policy development, and market development, the private sector working with government.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner.
Green energy, how am I going to support it? Is that the question?
How would you support green energy development in Michigan? Yes.
Well, not the way they're wanting to support it right now, not the way it's passed in the energy bill. We're trying to pay our bills. People are devastated. I watched 3 U-Haul trucks load up this week, just in my community. They're moving, they're leaving. It's hard to live here. It's a difficult place to live here in the UP. Heavy snowfall? We could write the book on that. I've talked to a lot of people that think what's been going on with what got passed with the energy bill, especially taking the rights away from the local control there with solar and wind. They can't even imagine seeing electric cars available or even be able to buy them. So the devastation out there, you don't always see it. Some people, you'll ask them how things are, and hey, it's great, it's wonderful, you know. They spend the day out on their boat, and they're retired, and everything's wonderful. I'm not retired. I'm representing a lot of people who have given up voting and stepped away and said it's not worth it. Just a certain few run it, and it's just not fair. I want to stand up for those people. Thank you.
Thank you. The question now goes to candidate Gerard.
Green energy. The rest of the world is producing solar panels, producing windmills. They're backing away from them in their own countries. Germany is backing away from all of the windmills that they put on because they wear out. They use oil. The theory that you can abandon fossil fuels and move to total green energy is a pipe dream. The bills that were passed were poorly planned and even more poorly executed. We do not have the infrastructure in place. Before you launch a project like that, you need input from the voters. This was a life-changing decision that was made by legislators. It should have been a ballot question for the public to act on. The best green energy there is right outside beyond those solar panels. The most efficient air cleaner there is a tree. Takes in carbon, produces oxygen. So the whole issue of green energy is a good idea. Adding solar panels and windmills to the existing basket of energy producers is fine. You have to have reliability and, and redundancy. Nothing functions without redundancy. You all know what happens when we have a thunderstorm or a big snowstorm. The electric grid goes down. You have to have backup. You have to have
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Mason.
Yes, there's no doubt that humans are not doing the environment any good. But there is no panacea. You can have wind, you can have solar, but you can't have 100% wind and solar. And that's what the proposal, or not the proposal, that's what the legislators passed earlier this year. Keep in mind that China, you said other competitors are going green. China is building new coal plants daily. Our economy requires affordable and reliable energy. Wind and solar only has a 20-year lifespan. It relies on technology, if we're to do the 100% like they're talking, relies on technology that's not yet invented. It'll increase our costs to the huge amount of infrastructure that we have to build. They don't tell us that. They're trying to change our appliances and the cars we drive. It's gonna cost us billions and billions of dollars. They talk about 160,000 new jobs. You need to ask yourself, how many of those new jobs are permanent jobs? Because a lot of them are just temporary jobs. There's cadmium contamination from the solar panels. So let's stop the war on fossil fuel. Let's open up line 5, put it under a tunnel.
That's the end of your
And let's go
time.
with nuclear.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
I have a different background than the rest of the candidates. I'm a chemical engineer by training and a patent attorney by profession, and I have traveled all over the world. China is producing 1 new coal-fired power plant a week to deal with the demands of their population, which in 1 generation has gone from bicycle power to wanting everything that the West has. So the basic premise is that everyone else is doing green. I would challenge that. I've also traveled heavily in Europe. The only place that has 100% renewable is Iceland with geothermal. And unless you're built over a volcano, you're not going to have geothermal. Now, there are places in Europe they've mandated renewable energy. The taxes in those countries are 2/3 higher than what we pay here because the government is putting the infrastructure in place. They also, as a technologist, have not achieved the level of reliability of the current energy sources. And in fact, in those countries, they have come to accept 2 to 3 hours a day when there's no power. Now, what do you do in the state of Michigan? The first thing you do is, I traveled on an ore boat 2 years ago. We were carrying coal from Superior down to 2 coal power plants down in Detroit. Whereas the Board Line Power is running on natural gas, we started in Michigan, instead of going 100% renewable, we go from coal to natural gas, and we do it in steps. And that's the best way to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be going to another question now, and that question will start with candidate Wagner. The question is, what is your position on the rights of Michiganders to have access to reproductive health care, including abortion?
Could you repeat it one more time?
Sure. What is your position on the rights of Michiganders to have access to reproductive health care, including abortion?
Well, what some folks call reproductive health care, oh, thanks, sorry about that. What some folks call reproductive health care and what others call it, and I just heard the Vice President Harris say something about reproductive health care, including pap smears and breast screening and something else. You'd go to your OB/GYN to go get done. So the reproductive health care here, to include abortion in it, the folks voted for that in '22. And it passed with 57% here in Michigan. I understand Florida's is up for a vote, and I served in law enforcement down there. Theirs has to be 60%, just to give you an idea. But I have been endorsed as the only candidate from Right to Life of Michigan. And, you know, I have a testimony. I have a 34-year-old daughter. I made a decision at the top of my police career. Once you understand that they're two separate issues, that's probably part of it right there. Just understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Gerard.
Reproductive rights is more than just abortion. Abortion has been addressed here in Michigan, as was mentioned previously, the last election. It is the law of the land in Michigan. The Supreme Court properly ruled that it was not a constitutional issue. It resided with the states. This state has acted. If you are dissatisfied with the action, get it on the next ballot for a review. There's not a whole lot more to talk about in Michigan. I know it's being made a national issue, but Michigan has resolved that issue. That's all I need.
Okay, thank you. The same question goes to candidate Mason.
Yes, I'm actually pro-life, very pro-life, but I do feel that there are exceptions to the rule. If you imagine a 12-year-old girl that got raped, for instance, should that be allowed to continue on if her decision is to not end it, to keep the baby or to not end, or to end the pregnancy? I can see times where an exception could be put in place. It is settled law, as the others have said, and that settled law, while not to my liking, it is settled law. There's not much that we can do about it right now, except, as Mr. Gerard said, take it back to the voters. It takes another constitutional amendment to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
I'm going to start with a little bit of medical science here. I'm not sure that everyone in the room is aware of this, but day in and day out, the most dangerous thing a woman does is become pregnant and carry a pregnancy to term and deliver a child. I'm not speaking as an alarmist. I'm looking at the medical facts. My mother was in healthcare my entire life. We are literally talking about life and death for a person in being and a potential person in being. And I don't think anybody would be as casual about saying who's got the right to decide if literally their life was at stake. And we have examples from states where doctors are terrified to treat women with problem pregnancies and leave them in the parking lot until they almost die before they bring them inside. I am sorry that we are living in a time when we don't have better options, but I don't want to see people in Michigan driving down the Seney Stretch in the middle of winter, desperately looking for someone to help them with health care. For those states that have decided to ban this procedure, I would have expected them to increase their funding for social services, maternal, prenatal care, maternal rights. I've not seen that yet. So until such time as the balance is done between literally life and death for a person and the fact that we have health care available to us, I would prefer that the decision be left with the woman. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. As has been said, Prop 3 through a ballot referendum with all of us across Michigan casting our votes, overwhelmingly chose by majority that we would have this right. Then we went further in the Michigan legislature because of the consequences of the national decisions that are happening, where states, the national left it up to the states. We made sure that it is codified into law in Michigan, that you have the right to get the quality care you receive with your doctor. That is something that I helped make happen. And in addition to that, we also have the question of the medication can be received by mail. As medication costs have gone up, getting medication by mail is actually more affordable, and there's a lot of transportation issues involved in getting medications. So this way it comes to you. We want to make sure that that also stays legal, and it almost was made illegal by the Supreme Court. There may be another case that comes that does that. Again, it is up to you to get the quality care you deserve. Finally, we actually did not remove the 24-hour waiting period, and there's some issues around Medicaid payments that are actually in the courts right now. And so we're not quite there yet in terms of having the quality of care that I think everyone deserves here. Why should you have to wait 24 hours for this procedure, which has been stated is a matter of life and death?
Thank you. We'll be going on to a new question now, and that will go first to candidate Gerard. The question is, what are your thoughts on safeguarding our water from pollution and toxic chemicals, including PFAS? What legislation would you support?
Clean water is what we have to have. You don't live without clean water. It's an essential element. I would definitely support the legislation that's currently being discussed and further legislation to address the impacts of particularly PFAS. We have a fire department here in the township. We used it a lot in the early days. So, you know, I had staff that were exposed. And that needs to be addressed. Firefighters need to be in a safe environment. They need to be in a safe circumstance when they're dealing with firefighting chemicals. We need them to be responding, particularly with the advent of electric and hybrid vehicles that you cannot use water on. You have to have something else to put that fire out. Right now, they let them burn because they can't put them out. So firefighting foam, the trucks that we have here in the township, large trucks, they only carry 300 gallons of foam. That's all they carry. The same thing for the city of Marquette. That's gone in seconds. So vehicle fires involving electric cars are going to burn. And that's just the nature of it. Again, it goes to the poor planning and the poor launch of the electric vehicle issue. Just things were not considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question goes to candidate Mason.
Yes, we all know that PFAS is a dangerous chemical used to put out fires. And as we know that the fires in a electric vehicle are going to be devastating. And so legislation needs to be put in place, and there's discussions on that now to resolve this issue. We cannot continue to pollute our water system, our land, due to energy sources that were not, or energy bills that were not well thought out. Energy is key to us, and the fossil fuel energy, the nuclear energy, and the wind and solar energy systems all need to work together, but we have to do it intelligently. So I support legislation to resolve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
I have to bullet point my answer because I have so much to say. Number one, start with the littlest thing, not going into the lake. I pioneered the recycling of cigarette butts for free for the city of Marquette. We're the leader in the Upper Peninsula for that. That's in partnership with the Superior Watershed Partnership. I also worked for years on the Wastewater Advisory Board. The number one pollutant of inland lakes in the state of Michigan, including in Iron County, where I just was yesterday, is, believe it or not, leaking septic tanks. There are no current legislation requirements, and once a septic tank has been installed, that it be inspected, pumped out, or any attention be paid to it. I believe that warrants some attention at the state level. I'm not talking about an inspector kicking you up in the middle of the night because your septic tank is, I'm talking about every 5 to 10 years getting someone over to look at it. Number 3, for PFAS, you are lucky to live in the state of Michigan. You go to the state website and there's a huge amount of information on PFAS, locations in the city, where they're doing PFAS testing of wells. The city water is being tested for PFAS per EPA regulations. And in conclusion, the final thing I want to say, we have the honor in the audience tonight of Dr. Leslie Putman of Northern Michigan University, who I had the privilege of assisting at the grunt level on her groundbreaking work of using hemp to remediate PFAS contamination of soil and water. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. I've been working on clean water issues since I wrote my master's thesis at MIT on watershed management in 1995. The things that we have done here in the last, since we passed the Clean Water Act in 1972 under President Nixon, brought funding to our rural communities that allowed them to build wastewater treatment plants and step away from some of the septic tanks and allow our communities to have a more sophisticated and more comprehensive clean water ways of cleaning our wastewater. There's also the need now we've recognized to remove all lead pipes in all of our systems. The state, in fact, made a $300,000 grant just this past year to the city of Marquette to do a lead pipe analysis. The state has also provided millions of dollars to Ishpeming to help improve its very old water system. And in this year's budget, the budget for next year, there's another $1 million coming to help support the cleanup, the upgrading of our water pipes. The PFAS question is one, it's everywhere now, and so we have to be careful and thoughtful to be most strategic about how we use our funds, because it's going to take a lot of work. Charcoal filters are one of the best ways of doing it. There's also a water affordability package, because this comes at a cost. I personally raised the water rates 40%, and I know how much that hurt people's pocketbooks. We need to look at entirely new ways of funding our water system so that it can be affordable going forward.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner.
So on PFAS, if you don't know, I live out at K.I. Sawyer. I moved there in early 2018. And at the time, the old Eagle was DEQ. Their building was right there on the industrial area. I drink the water out there. A lot of people won't drink the water there. I believe it's very safe. PFAS has been determined to be in numerous household items and items that we use. Plastic items, furniture, the fire-resistant material that's on furniture and clothing in the past. There's PFAS, from what I understand, everywhere. There's a lot going on, just like what was said already. I'm more concerned with several other areas, and having some experience in living in states successfully like Wisconsin and Ohio. In Ohio, dealing with the septic tanks, having the runoff was going straight lined right into lakes, creeks, any waterways. Ohio made the seller pay. Wisconsin had the buyer pay. They issued permits to every address over in Wisconsin here. I think back in like 06, 07, maybe 2010 it started. And they started with our waterways. Make sure we do this right with this septic bill they've tried to make up. Do it right. Issue the permits. Give the people time to catch up with stuff and protect our waterways.
Thank you. Excuse me. We'll be going to another question now, and that will start with candidate Mason. The question is, Illinois has outlawed the banning of books from public libraries. If similar legislation was presented in Michigan, would you support or oppose it, and why?
I would not outlaw the banning of books. Too many books that we've seen in the libraries today are pornographic, okay? We've all seen it on the news, we understand that. To say a total ban on non-pornographic books, no. But I think that if we look at what's going on in our schools today, with some of the DEI stuff, it is unacceptable that we have pornographic books in our libraries. That's the one issue that drives me mad. A non-pornographic book is fine. I would never ban that. I would never want to see that banned. But you cannot have K through, say, 6, K through 12, with pornographic books in their hands. It's just a wrong thing to do. The school should be set up to educate the kids, math, reading, social studies, civics, and not spend so much time on these other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
Candidate Brum grew up in Marquette, and my second home was the Peter White Public Library, which is still practically a holy place for me, because when I walk in the door, I know that everything is possible in that building, because every bit of knowledge I need or want is there. I think it is sensationalist to say that in a school library, a child can go to a school librarian and ask for pornography and be handed pornography. I think that is sensationalist. I don't know of any school system on the planet that would allow that. The one thing I've encountered in all of my travels, every culture I know, is no one advocates pornography being in the hands of children. So I cannot accept that as a statement. That being said, if you look at history, and just because I'm an engineer doesn't mean I haven't read a few books, there have been time and time again when people have decided the problems can be solved if we burn books. Burn the Library of Alexandria. The pictures in the 1930s of the Nazis burning banned books should scare the living daylights out of you, because we have people now who are doing that. The problem I have with my students at Northern is not that they're reading pornography, it's that they're not reading enough. So I am totally against any ban about books. A parent's job is to keep bad books away from their kids, not a librarian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Please, I'd like the audience to refrain from commenting until the end.
Sorry.
Are we going to continue in quiet? Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
I guess we're maintaining the silence like we do in a library, if you think of it that way. I am also someone who went home every week when we went to the library as a child with every possible, I took out the maximum number of books every week and I read them all. And that education, I grew up in a town of 800 people, but the library brought the world to me. And my parents were with me in making those decisions, and the librarians did a fantastic job of advising me sometimes when I was maybe ready for the next step up in my reading or something that I was interested in learning about. They could help you find that information. They provide an enormously valuable service, and the free public library is an American idea. It started here first in America, nowhere else in the world. And it has allowed us to have access to education and access to resources that has allowed us to be leaders in innovation. And it also helps us become, as we learn about others, we learn about how other places, and it makes us more, a place of more welcoming and inclusive so that we can each be our fullest and truest self and reach our potential. And for that, I am very, very much in favor of continuing to let libraries work as they do.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner.
And what was it again?
The question was, Illinois has outlawed the banning of books from public libraries. If similar legislation was presented in Michigan, would you support or oppose it, and why?
It's already been said. Banning of books made me think of Field of Dreams. There's a scene in Field of Dreams. It's one of my favorite movies. I don't have very many movies, but I've got Field of Dreams. And if you're like me, and you're probably not, I wasn't raised like most kids. We had a dairy farm. Dad used to say, homework stays in school. And I'm not saying we didn't have books. We had a Britannica set, Britannica encyclopedia set. And they came around on the farms in those days and sold those. Dad grabbed those right up. Man, I don't know what I'd have done. My father almost passed when I was graduating high school in 18, and he was real stubborn. And I opened this book up, this Britannica book, and I'm like, Dad, we got to go to the hospital. It says right here, you're going to die. And, you know, it's something, the books at different levels, as far as banning them, don't put the inappropriate books at the grade level we don't need them at. There's a common sense here. Our children don't need to see that. I work in the schools. I'm a substitute teacher. I mean, I complained about seeing, when I step on some Swifties, I complained about seeing Taylor Swift having a golden book, you know, but seriously, the music, I didn't see that one coming there. I didn't know that. Okay, thank you so much. No, man.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Gerard.
As I look around this room, and the folks up here on the dais, most of us grew up at about the same time, and we did not have this issue. Times are changing, folks. Banning of books, banning of just about anything should not be on our radar. The issue of choice that we have in our Constitution is just that. It's an issue of choice. The times that have changed is that the family structure is not the same as it was before. We don't have parents as involved in the raising of their children as they were before. Not always, but for the most part. Banning books, we've got a lesson on that. And that lesson was in the 30s. We don't want to go there again. Before things are banned, you'd have to think very clearly about what else can be banned if you start going down that pathway. So with that, I would oppose banning.
Thank you. We will go to another question now, and that question will go to candidate Brum. Question is, what is your position on collective bargaining, right to work laws, and prevailing wage?
When I worked in the Empire Mine, when I was going to Michigan Tech, I was a member of Local 4950, United Steelworkers of America. Last year, I qualified as a contingent assistant professor at Northern. I'm now a member of the teachers union at Northern. All the while I was working as a patent attorney, which is a white-collar job, I did not have access to unions, neither did I have union protection. As a result, I came to work every day of my working career wondering if today someone was going to come in and say, you have no right to stay here anymore, you're excused from your job, and it has nothing to do with performance, we're just going to drop you. And this has had a devastating effect on my ability to complete a career in a spot because there's no union protection. I am a strong supporter of unions. I'm a strong supporter of collective bargaining. The balance in this country between the employer and the employee has gone so far in favor of the employer that employees are forced to work in ridiculous amounts of time and effort for minimum wage. It's only through collective bargaining that people can get together and have a chance at securing any sort of, I want to say, coherent employment so they can plan for the future. And I'm saying this based on my career, and I would say it based on anyone. Without a union, you have no job security. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. Several points I want to make. First and foremost, unions and worker rights are what created the middle class. And without them, and without that bringing into balance against the large corporate interests, and we saw that play out here in the history of the mining in the UP with the unions having to step up. People were being killed in the mines. And the unions stepped up and helped protect workers in the mines, helped protect our nurses who are being asked to work for so many hours while they're caring for people. That's a present day issue that's really, really fraught right now. We just had the strike settle over in the Sioux. This is a very current and present issue in the Upper Peninsula, in our history, and it's going on today. I voted to restore the right to organize in Michigan that was taken away by a previous administration. I voted to expand prevailing wages. Just this week, voted to put prevailing wages on solar projects of a large size. Made that vote today, this week. I also want to point out that unions are a key part of our health, not only inside of our healthcare system, but the ability as a worker to access healthcare, which is so important. So for all those reasons, I strongly support collective bargaining, making sure folks have the right to organize. It leads to a better product coming, or a service, and it leads to better lives.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes.
Repeat the question.
What is your position on collective bargaining, right to work laws, and prevailing wage?
So I joined a union when I had my job with the federal government. It's a job that some don't realize. It's TSA. It's not just security. It's actually an enforcement job. It actually kept you from running for a job or running for this office, having a two-party system. And folks don't even realize that. So I want to clear that up. I joined the union with the federal government. And I did not get fired. The Hatch Act kept me from keeping that job and running for office when the shutdown happened. I made a decision and stepped out when the shutdown happened. As far as the union goes, I think they've run their course in some areas with safety. I think we've got a lot of it, the dues going to bosses that have become corrupt. And when you add in Michigan with its status as considered to be the most corrupt state because of some of the issues we've got and being dead last in governing, you can go to my site, I've posted that before, I'll throw it out there again. But the prevailing wage, I've got an uncle that's a retired veteran from, he's not retired, he's still working, sorry about that, but a veteran. And he explained the prevailing wage to me. I am not against unions. I am not against unions.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Gerard.
I've been on three sides of this fence, two sides in the center. My entire career in the public sector has been around collective bargaining. I highly support collective bargaining. It is an extremely effective tool for employers and employees to come together. If they can't come together, there are alternatives. There are arbitrators, there are mediators, and there's ultimately court. I've been a member of a union in my early years, so I understand union membership and why it's important. In the federal side, when I was working for the federal government, there are requirements. It's different on the federal side, so wages are determined by the feds in some cases. The biggest challenge that I've had in my professional career on the public side is with board members that are being elected, like us. They're being elected to governing bodies who will come from outside of the public sector. They come from the private sector and do not realize public and private are legally different entities. They have different laws, different regulations, different rules. And that is the most difficult part of this environment. Short answer, collective bargaining is always the way to go in my opinion. And if you have a good working relationship between employer and employee, they form their own bargaining agreement. And we've done that. I've been in situations later in Marquette Township where we had a group of employees that formed their own, I'm finished.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Mason.
It goes fast, doesn't it? I grew up in the Detroit area, okay? So I grew up in the heart of the auto industry where unions prevailed, okay? All my friends' parents pretty much were in the union. My wife was in the union. So I understand the importance of union work, and I understand the importance of collective bargaining. It can be a very, very, very good thing, usually is, okay? I've also seen situations where it has not helped, okay? So one of the questions, or one of the things here, was the right to work laws. If a union is neglectful, then they need to be held accountable, okay? For the most part, the unions have worked, and the unions have done a very good job. It was mentioned about the mines. They made it safer. They increased wages. We built Michigan on those wages, on those union negotiations, if you will. And so I am a supporter of collective bargaining. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be going on to a new question, and that will go first to candidate Hill. This is the question. 2 major child care centers have closed down in our community in the past year. What can the legislature do to help young families access affordable, quality child care?
All right, hold on, folks. So, yes, we have a child care crisis here in our communities. We have, this week, we approved in the budget 2 more fire inspectors. We only had 1 in the whole state of Michigan who is qualified to certify child care centers. We have now, we're going to triple that number. That work, and that number was identified by identifying the number that are in the queue. So that should take care of the folks who are ready to go, getting them ready to go up and running. We have an incredible program here, again, with the Lake Superior Community Partnership, where folks can learn how to run daycare centers in their own home and have help going through that certification process, all the paperwork, and the fees are covered through the program. So there's work happening there, and there's some state funding, also private funding there, and federal funding. It's an incredible program. There is a new one opening up with NMU through TriShare, where the employer pays a third, government pays a third, and the person, the parent caregiver pays a third. That's an incredible program that also helps bring all these partners together to move forward so we can get this very important resource for our children, and to bring peace of mind to parents. It's just devastating when you aren't sure what's happening with your child. It's both, and then we have also increasing the ability for folks to go to school and get trained, so you have qualified workers who can earn more pay.
That's the end. Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner.
Affordable child care, is that the question?
Yes.
Affordable child care.
What can the legislature do to help young families access affordable, quality child care?
We could bring back the monies that we should bring back, that we aren't bringing back. We could help that out. $82 billion, $83 billion budget. I work in the schools. So the 83 budgets, like up here, and our schools, and I'm going to go there just for a little bit here. I don't have that much time. It's just going to run out of me while I'm taking a thought. But the scores in our schools haven't come up at all. And the workers that were short in the schools, and the workers that are in there with their children, and the child care situation, and having to have an aide or 2 in every school, and some of the dynamics we're seeing, I do not have an answer for the child care issue. I don't have one. I'd like to ask the public more and see if anybody can come up with something that really works without burdening the taxpayer even more. As a legislator, get the monies up here we should get, not what was brought up. and get stuff done we need done. And I think maybe just talking with you folks more, coming up with something that doesn't burden you more with taxes, where it's a third here and a third there.
Thank you, thank you. The question now goes to candidate Gerard.
This goes back to a prior question, economic freedom and vitality. With families as strapped as they are, we have 2 working parents. That's the reason we have the issue with childcare. We also have a Michigan lottery that is supposed to be funding schools. Does it make any sense to anybody in this room to give out a $485 million lottery prize to one person? Why would we not tap some of that money, pull it back into the school systems, and allow the schools to take on that responsibility for child care? Why not tap some of that money to build roads? Why not tap some of that money to do a lot of things that we need to do, instead of giving it to one person every 2 weeks or every other week and giving all that money away for nothing? Let's use it. That's it.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Mason.
Yes, I ran across several families knocking on doors that have actually pulled out of the workforce. They pulled out because they could not afford child care. It's become very expensive, very unaffordable. The program that you talked about, Lake Superior Partnership Program, it's a good program. However, we tried to implement it over in Barron County. We could not find a single person willing to do it. Part of the problem is regulation. Regulations on the facility, the regulations on how the system should be set up. We had a few people that came in, talked to us, and backed away. So it's a problem. I do think that we could use that funding, or use funding, in the school system to support such a program. However, if you look at the recent bill that was just passed for our education system, they are freezing the funding to the schools for per pupil payments. So this is a solvable problem. We just have to put our heads together and fix it. And it's a major concern for employment and employers. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
I've sat in meetings of the Marquette County Commission, the Marquette City Commission, where people have come forward elucidating this problem, and their solutions have varied. I heard the waiting period for not just the fire inspector, for the building inspector for a daycare in the Upper Peninsula is a minimum of 6 to 9 months, because even having 2 additional would not be stationed here. Again, it's a question of our resources being spent, our taxes going to Lansing and not getting the resources back. What I've also heard is that it's not just child care, it's getting the child to and from child care and having arrangements to pick up when you work late, things like that, which right now, because of the rigidity of the permitting, all the children have to be gone by a certain amount of time. So one of the ideas I heard expressed, which I thought had a great deal of common sense to it, we have a huge influence in our schools now to work on trade school aspects of education, whereas not everyone is going to be interested in a full college education. And my idea is that every public school, every high school have a child care option where a student would sign up for that, and there would be a child care center at the school. They would be given classes and trained to work and paid to take care of children in that school system. And then when they graduated, they'd have a certificate that would enable them to make a living. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be going on to a new question now. And that question will go first to candidate Wagner. This is the question. Our system of government depends on free and fair elections. Do you think Michigan has the processes in place to allow for accessible, secure, and accurate elections? Why or why not?
Yeah, we've got a lot in place, and a lot has been passed that a lot of people are very upset with. And moving here from other states, it allows me to help explain to folks that other states had trouble when they first had the absentee ballots. Ohio, we can remember the Chads down in Florida back in the day, I believe I was there. I've worked elections in 2 of those states as a precinct inspector. And I took pride in agreeing with we have laws in the other states, that's one thing I'd be here, let me get that. But I'd be with my other Republican worker and 2 Democrat workers in a precinct. And I took pride in taking that box and putting it in my trunk and going to the courthouse and feeling secure. And we have such great workers working in our elections right now. And there was so much confusion with the TCF Center and what happened down there. They only had 5,000 Democrats working and only 300 Republicans working. And we do not have a law in Michigan. We just, oh, you should have this many Republicans and this many Democrats. The other states have that law. If there's anything I'd like to see put forward, that would be great. I'm trying to encourage everybody I can, come out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Gerard.
It's a highly contentious issue. I've worked elections for close to 30 years and never saw the dissatisfaction that there was with the last election on both sides. I'm much more, I don't want to say simple, but much more rigid about elections. I'm of the opinion that the early voting and the late voting don't benefit anyone. I would be in favor of going back to the same system that I grew up with and that we've used ever since I've been voting. And that was, you have election day. Election day is where you go to cast your ballot. If you can't go on that day, you can do an absent ballot, an official absent ballot. There is a process in Michigan. It's not a mail-in and it's not a mass mailed ballot. You get it from your clerk. That is the only way that you can justify and document that you have a valid, honest election. Vote in person or by absent ballot on an election day. If you're one of the folks who can't potentially get out, law enforcement, medical, whatever, absent ballot. They've always been available. They just went out. Just yesterday, I think they were distributed. That's the way you have a fair, honest, acceptable election. That's it.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Mason.
Yes, I worked polling stations. I've worked several times. I've worked up in Houghton, I've worked in Baraga County, and I feel that in the Upper Peninsula, our voting has been safe, okay? I look at the ID that comes in, I check to make sure that everybody is doing their job, and for the most part, it's very good. If there is a problem in the Upper Peninsula, the problem is, in fact, our voting rolls. I've actually ran into some non-citizens. Now, one is my neighbor, a Canadian. She got a for real ballot, okay? Not only that, she just got recently sent a voter ID card, okay? So voter rolls is, I think, something that needs to be addressed and cleaned up, okay? Transparency is necessary to ensure free elections. I agree here that the cost of having the early elections is a major problem. If you can imagine having 9 days, having all your polling people in there, it becomes very, very costly, especially for small townships and small precincts. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
I I once ran for city commission in a primary election, and first thing I heard was I had made the cut. I was one of 4 candidates who'd be advancing. 30 minutes later, there was a announcement that they had found some more ballots, and I did make the cut. I was immediately bombarded by helpful comments on Facebook telling me that everything was rigged and that certain people had decided I wasn't going to move forward. For that reason, and to answer my own concerns, I requested a recount. And you fill out a form, and it was $225 because you had to spend money on each precinct, and then there were 2 absentee ballot precincts. And then the city and the county worked together to set it up. After that experience, I trust the voting system in the state of Michigan. I watched them wheel in these massive Tupperware containers sealed with the ballots. I watched a group of people work with grim determination and double and triple checking every ballot, every vote. What happened in the last 4 years was a whole bunch of people started screaming at each other that the fix was in. And down in Georgia, 2 election workers, just regular people, were hounded from their lives and had to flee for their lives because people blamed them for a result. We need to stop criticizing the election workers and start doing everything we can to get people voting so that our votes count. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. Again, we are in a situation where the governing law was a ballot initiative. We have early voting because that's what the residents of Michigan voted to make happen. Now, it certainly had different consequences in different parts of our state. The 9 days of early voting are challenges in cities for different reasons than their challenges they are in small towns. In response to hearing those challenges, we changed, and now there can be fewer polling locations so that we can be we can allocate our dollars and our people more effectively. So that was a change we made just since we passed that ballot initiative. We passed a law where, so there's every 5,000 people can have a polling location. So we've heard that there are challenges and we responded to them. I also want to say that I absolutely trust the clerks of the Upper Peninsula, as has been said, but the way we vote in Michigan is the same. Whether you're in Detroit, whether you're in Paradise, whether you're in Petoskey, whether you're in Battle Creek. It is the same. They are trained by the same people. It is done, the regulations flow down from the Secretary of State. It is the same in every part of Michigan. And the persistence and the care that is taken in the Upper Peninsula is taken in every part of Michigan.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Wagner. Oh, no, I'm wrong, sorry. She did that. New question.
I got a whole bunch to add.
Oh, thank you.
Nice try.
Oh, dear. This is it. Okay, that's what I had in my head. It's been a long day, guys. Okay, new question, starting with candidate Gerard. Yes? Okay, thank you. The question is, what efforts would you make as legislator to address gaps in mental health services in rural areas?
Oh, that's a good one. Mental health is drastically underfunded and underavailable throughout Michigan, not just in the Upper Peninsula. A concerted effort has to be made at the legislative level to get money back into mental health, to get back into treatment facilities that, like we had before, we had major facilities in Traverse City, we had them in Newberry, we had them in a number of places. Handing a bunch of pills to somebody and putting them back out on the street does not solve the mental health issue. It raises its ugly head in many, many different ways, and we really need to address mental health. One of my children is moving towards getting her doctoral degree in psychology. So, that's a start. We have to get more people out there, and we have to make a concerted effort. It'll solve a number of problems that are being addressed currently, being blamed on something else. So, that's my position.
Thank you. Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Mason.
I agree, mental health is a huge problem. I'm on the board of Paragon County Memorial Hospital, and we see mental health issues a lot, okay? In the past, if someone was having a crisis, what they did is they'd send a police officer out to pick up the person that was having a crisis and bring him back to the hospital. By that time, they're really in a crisis. There has to be a solution. We have to fund mental health. Many of the deaths that are occurring in our state are due to mental health issues. You've got issues with suicide. One child that we had in our hospital, it's sad to say, but one child we had in our hospital, we could get him no help. There was absolutely no help in the entire Upper Peninsula. We ended up having to rely on people out of the state of Michigan to take care of this child. This is unacceptable. We need funding for it. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
Candidate Brum remembers a very good TV show called Northern Exposure, which there's a federal program whereby people wanting to go to medical school sign a deal that says they will accept government help to pay for medical school, and in exchange for the first 4 to 6 years after they graduate into their field, they will work in a population that is underserved. The mental health crisis is not in the Upper Peninsula, it's not in the state, it's everywhere. And in fact, the most common reality, the sheriff of Cook County says basically when the mental health institutions were shut down, the jails became the mental health institutions, and 2/3 of the people in his jail at any time were there because of mental health issues. So this is a problem that can be solved with a federal program to inspire people to go into the mental health fields, to compensate them so they don't have to graduate with horrific debt, and to place them in underserved localities that require as much mental health treatment as any place else. And this is where we can do this working together. Again, we've talked about reproductive rights, but I personally know people who travel to Green Bay, to Mayo's and downstate routinely to obtain all sorts of treatment, including mental health treatment. This is part of where taxes going to Lansing aren't coming back to us. So I recommend we partner with the federal government and ramp up Northern Exposure, Upper Peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. This is by far another top priority issue right behind housing. Yes, as has been said, we closed institutions, but we did not, back at that time, set up the community-based health centers that were supposed to help these people. Rather than shutting them off in some brick building somewhere, we were going to have services in the community. We are now working towards making that happen. And in particular, there's now community-based mental health centers that Senator Stabenow is leaving as her legacy as she leaves us from government service. So there is that option that we are working. There is not yet one here in the Upper Peninsula, and the problem is we don't have the providers, the people, which goes back to the housing problem, which goes also to the transportation problem and the cost of education. So we are, to address that, is helping. There is increased funding for scholarships for people to get these degrees. Social work degrees are now almost completely covered by the state of Michigan, if you qualify. We are working to make that pipeline as easy a process as possible. I personally know someone who left NMU and is now a social worker in the schools in Rapid River, for example, who took advantage of that program. In addition, the other really critical piece that we voted on just this year, mental health insurance is not the same as physical insurance, if you had to deal with that. And why we treat the head differently, we've changed it so there's parity between mental health insurance and physical insurance.
Thank you.
Lots to talk about.
Oh,
Same question goes to candidate Wagner.
whoa, lots to talk about. No comment here. I can't talk that fast. So this is right up there with my #1 issue with the untransparent government and our accountability in this state, lack of. I've heard so many horror stories from Newberry closing down. Folks didn't realize there's Newberries all over the country that closed down in the 70s. Those folks were just put right out in the streets from what I understand. Horror stories. A lot of people would like to see state hospitals brought back. I get told that regularly. Would they be run different? It's 2024. Here's another big issue to look at, and this is on, I've got a lot on this on my webpage. Working in the schools, and there's a difference. There's mental health, there's mental illness, there's undiagnosed and diagnosed, and then we've got our developmental disabilities, and a lot of those folks are on the edge, and if your parents can take care of you, or you got a family member and they take care of you, you stay in their home. But here in Michigan, we go to age 26 for these folks. All the other states go to age 21. We're the only state. Folks move here just for our developmental disabled type system that we have. It's a long study and everything. Whole body health, I push that. I call it mental brain health on all my flyers. We should go into an office and we should examine both our whole mind, our body, and everything. See if things are working right. See if you're just lacking a vitamin or something like that, and I'm all done.
Thank you. No one expects a whole position paper in 1.5 minutes, right? You guys are doing great. Okay, we have a new question, and that will start with candidate Mason. What do you think should be changed or added to the firearm safety laws that took effect this year in Michigan?
I take it you're talking about the red flag laws, that type of thing?
It just says that took effect this year in Michigan.
Okay. In general, fully support the Second Amendment, okay? And the protection of that Second Amendment. Many of the problems that exist in our society today are right back to what we just talked about, and that's mental health, okay? If you look at the people that are being killed, half of them are suicide. You're not going to stop that with red flag laws. It's just not going to happen. They'll find another way. If you look at the school shootings that are occurring, just tragic, tragic school shootings, again, it's a mental health problem. Who in their right mind would go in and shoot up a school? I don't care if you're 15 years old or 25 years old. Who in their right mind would do that? Therefore, we need to solve the mental health issues that exist in our society today, rather than worry a whole lot about red flag laws and keeping guns out of people's hands. That's not the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question goes to candidate Brum.
Candidate Brum recently started teaching at Northern Michigan University, and twice since then, after an incident, the most recent one was at Marquette City Hall, where a person with a gun went to the police department looking for a police officer. The next day, at the most available time, I invited police officers from Northern Michigan University and the city of Marquette to come in to do what I call a safety briefing for my students. Northern has a one-time safety briefing for all incoming students in their freshman year. After that, there is no formal training on that. I come from an industrial background where if there's a safety incident, we stopped work, we gathered everybody in a room, we discussed what happened, how to avoid it the next time. The phrase I kept using was situational awareness. So in terms of making people aware of what can happen, that's part of it. Another part of it is we need age limits on the right to purchase a gun, just like you have age limits on the right to buy pot or booze. You shouldn't be 14 years old and being able to buy a weapon of mass destruction. And safety training should be mandatory the same way that driver's ed requires a certain level of safety training. I myself have taken NRA safety training and benefited from it. I know how to disable a pistol with a pencil. Go ahead, ask me, I can do it. And also reoccurring training on how to keep firearms safe within a location. And this has to do with gun safes, gun locks, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question goes to candidate Hill.
Thank you. I'm going to focus on the safety part of this question. The extreme risk production orders are for people at their most vulnerable moment, when they're thinking of taking their own life or catastrophically taking someone else's. And at that moment, the medical profession can step in. I have been approached by doctors about how to use this law because they have patients under their care that they are concerned with, particularly harming themselves, which is the #1 concern in our communities. And so having these laws in place, I have been told personally, we have already saved lives because of that extreme risk protection order. It is the role of the police and the prosecutors to implement that law, and they are working diligently to make sure that it is done in a fair and effective manner. The gun locks are putting the responsibility where it belongs with the adults. The adults need to be responsible for their weapons and their firearms, just like we are expected to be responsible with all the other things around the care of a child. And then on background checks exist to close the loopholes that have made it too easy for criminals to have guns. And so with those background checks, now, if you're a law-abiding person, yes, it's one more step. It's a step, it's a little bit of time. But for a criminal, we could actually help catch people that way. That's why we passed those laws, and that's my statement.
Thank you. Same question to candidate Wagner.
Of course, I've been endorsed by Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners. They're our legislative arm down there in Lansing. Good site to look up, MCRGO. They keep you up to date on everything going on, what's been passed, and what these laws have done. The one is called the red flag law, the other's the storage law, as I call it, and then the background checks. I was raised with a firearm in every room in the house, but I was raised a lot different. I was hunting with a 12 gauge when I was 11 years old, and I've been a police officer. And mental health is up at the top of this whole thing. The red flag law takes your guns for a year. It's not proper due process. Violates our Second Amendment, and they need overturned. The storage law, what are they going to come up with next? I mean, we know to put our firearms up when there's children in the house. Don't we? Oh,
No comments.
all violations of the Second Amendment. The background checks, if I was to give my firearm to a relative, they had to do a background check. You are not gonna stop what's happened this week, and it's horrid, with 2 officers being killed in this state. Bad guys are gonna have guns.
Same question goes to candidate Gerard.
Second Amendment has basically one purpose, to allow the citizenry to protect itself from an overbearing government. That is the purpose of the Second Amendment, and that is the reason the Second Amendment is under attack so much by an administration and a government that wants oppression. They want to tell us by mandate what we do. That is not representative government. With regard to the bills that were passed, I've read the bills. I'm a firearms instructor. I teach people safety, and I teach people marksmanship. I've been doing it for a lot of years. The firearms itself is not the issue. The issue is what we've talked about in the past, mental health. We have approximately 300 million gun owners in this country. If we were the problem, it would be a lot bigger than it is. You have a small group of people that have taken it upon themselves to become a criminal. The Michigan State shooting was a convicted felon that was arrested with 2 additional felonies that the prosecutor plea bargained down and turned loose. Then he created the act. Prosecutors need to stop plea bargaining felonies and prosecute them. It may not show up well on their win column, but we need more than win columns. So there are a number of things that have to happen. Mental health, prosecutors doing their jobs, courts doing their jobs, and holding people accountable so they don't get their hands on firearms. Those of us that are CPL holders or certified firearms instructors or people that have recently legally purchased firearms should not be affected.
Thank you. We are now coming to our last question before our closing go, I'm sorry, did we miss? Back? No, no, I didn't do it wrong this time, come on. Okay, this is our final question before we do closing statements. And this question will start with candidate Brum. The question is, because we have a two-party system in Lansing, how do you plan to approach and work with members of the other party to be effective and accomplish goals for your constituents?
As I tell my students, you're going to be working with people your entire life. Some of them you'll be working with productively, and some of them maybe not so much, but they're still going to show up to work the next day, and you're still going to have to work with them. And all those cute videos you see on TikTok with the insults and the things like that, in the real world, the people show up the next day. So you have to start with the attitude of we have to get along and work together. The number one thing the delegation from the Upper Peninsula needs to do is work together. We are by far outnumbered by other people in the state legislature with other interests. You may be surprised to know that the vast majority of people who travel to the Upper Peninsula are not from the Lower Peninsula, they're from out of state. In fact, I've lived and worked in the Lower Peninsula many times, and the idea of crossing the Mackinac Bridge was like abhorrent. I mean, there's just so many other places to go. So the number one thing you have to do is you make the commitment to work. When candidate Melody invited me to her kickoff meeting, I went. I thought, what the heck, I might as well listen and talk and learn, and it was a very productive meeting. I've demonstrated in the past, I've dealt with people from all over the world, different cultures, different backgrounds, and worked productively creating intellectual property rights. All you have to do to decide to get things done is decide to work together. And you just have to be a grown-up to do that. That's what we need, more grown-ups.
Thank you. The same question to candidate Hill.
Thank you. There's really three parts to the job. And first and foremost, actually, is constituent service before we even get to bills and lawmaking. And on that, we are absolutely 100% unified, that we bring the resources and solve problems for the Upper Peninsula and for the residents and what they need and the businesses and what they need. We work together tirelessly, and the amazing Linda, who's about to retire, who works in Senator McBroom's office, is really a treasure, and we're going to miss her very much. And we work together so closely on those issues. And then you have the part of developing a bill, talking to each other as you're thinking about what do we want to get done, what's an issue that needs to be addressed. And in that bill development, there's finding the time to work together is a bit of a challenge sometimes. The Senate and the House actually meet at different times. And so there's some challenges around time, but we work on it. And then there's the voting itself. Voting is, you're voting your district, you're voting your conscience, you're voting your party. And in those three ways that you have to think about it, there's what's good for, the Upper Peninsula, but then there's pressure to vote for your party. And then there's, what do I know in my heart? What are my values? And that is a really critical part of making that decision. Did you put up the stop sign? No, okay. Sorry, I'm looking around. I'm like, yeah, you don't, okay. So, and on those things, it really depends on the issue, but it is absolutely first, and now she's putting up the stop sign. We must, there are the values that we share as UPers that I want to make sure that we are enacting into law.
Thank you. Same question to candidate Wagner.
What was it again?
Because we have a two-party system in Lansing, how do you plan to approach and work with members of the other party to be effective and accomplish goals for your constituents?
Well, I'm going to bring up inviting Margaret to my opening thing. I saw her at the courthouse, and Rep. Cambenzie always left a pile of the Michigan Constitution sitting there. And because it states right in there the abortion issue that got passed, some folks don't believe it till you show it to them. And I go, I can't do nothing about it. It got passed by the people. It's legal to birth. So anyway, I'm looking for these and they're not there. And Margaret Brum walks up. And she befriended me at one of these forums I've done before. And I have a lot of Democrat friends. Number one thing I would do, if if you want to pass something that's going to work, folks don't know that the TCF Center was a counting location. I'm constantly educating out there. And pass a law that we will have an equal number of Republicans and Democrats working in our voting precincts and our counting locations. I believe that that is the biggest thing that would unite us. Working together, it forces you. I worked with folks that didn't believe like me. We were professional. We didn't dare break rules like here and call each other out or something. You got a job to do, and you do it. And there's a statement out there about the Uniparty and that they're working so much together and they're just passing it. Yeah, the lobbyists and legislators have been controlled down there and stuff, and things haven't gone right. Sorry.
Thank you. The same question to candidate Gerard.
The Upper Peninsula is comprised of 4 representative districts and 1 Senate district. All of our responsibilities are to represent our constituents. And I don't care what party you're in, because it will change on occasion. We all need to work together to the best interests of the UP. What happens in the far west district or the far north district impacts the central district, the 109th. What happens in the east impacts the 109th. Conversely, 109th impacts all of them. We need to speak with one voice to cover the Upper Peninsula for 300,000 roughly residents rather than my 90,000. So in answer to your question, absolutely. We'd have to work together across the aisle if necessary to accomplish the objectives that you want accomplished. That's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to candidate Mason.
Yes, I agree 100% with that. The fact of the matter is we make up 3% of Michigan's population. It is important if we're going to accomplish the goals necessary for us in the UP, then we must stand together. And I don't care if a bill is proposed by a Republican or a Democrat, or if I propose a bill as a Republican candidate, we must work together. If it's not going to be good for the Upper Peninsula, it's not good for me, okay? As far as how will I work with others, because we are only 3%, so my whole background, most of my career, has been negotiating with Chinese ministers, with government officials here in the US, with Europeans, and the goal was to make things better for all of us. Make things better for the European people I was dealing with or the Chinese people I was dealing with, and we didn't always have the same goals in mind at the beginning. But by golly, by the end, we had accomplished something. And it's just listening to concerns. That's where I'm at, and that's what I've been doing my entire life. Thank you.
Thank you. We have now come to the final minutes of the 109th District Primary Forum. Each of our candidates will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. I'm going to start by reading the statement that Carl Bonak sent us, since he was not able to be here tonight, and I'll have the same time limit. Okay. We'll wait till the timer's ready. Okay. Ready? Okay. This is the forum statement by Carl Bonak. Good evening. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for being here and for caring about the direction of our future in Michigan. I also wanted to apologize for not being here personally, as we had another event on the schedule that we were unable to move. But I want to share just a couple important things. Anyone who knows me understands I am not a politician. I love people, I love our communities, and I love the Upper Peninsula. For 30 years, I've been in your homes telling you when there were clear skies and when storms were coming. You've trusted me, in part, I hope, because you know I care about you. I think we've had too much partisanship, too much angry infighting, and too much win at all costs when it comes to politics. I am looking to put our peninsula above partisanship. If someone has a good idea that will help the UP, it shouldn't matter what party they are in. And likewise, when it's a bad idea for the UP, it shouldn't matter what party the idea comes from. We should fight it. I am running for state representative because I want to work with the rest of the Upper Peninsula legislative contingent to amplify our voice in Lansing. It's a small voice. We only have 3% of the state's population. That's why it's been a tradition for the UP state representatives to work together for the good of the Upper Peninsula and its residents, no matter party affiliation. Last year's energy legislation passed by House Democrats will have a negative impact on UP residents. One study commissioned by the Mackinac Center for Public Policy warns that this legislation will double our power rates in the coming years. Electricity is the lifeblood of our economy. There must be a constant flow. This legislation mandates that our grid be powered almost exclusively by weather-dependent wind and solar energy, which means less reliable electricity. This harmful legislation will put our livelihoods and way of life in jeopardy. Unfortunately, we seem to be losing control of how we want to live here in the UP, and we're handing over more and more control to Lansing. I believe that has to stop. It's important to understand that we are not one-size-fits-all state and need to stop acting like we are. Was that a stop? Thank you. Okay. The next closing statement will come from candidate Wagner.
So I wasn't born and raised here. And some say you gotta be born and raised here to be a Uper. Some say if you've put up with one hard winter, you're a Uper. I put up with a few hard winters. Moved here in 13. Those people know me. I only know hard work. I don't know anything else. What happened to me, it caused me to come out of private life and stand up and see things different. I've lived in 3 other states successfully. Couldn't believe it was like stepping back in time 35 years, back in 13. Being told by a Republican person there, when I called out car insurance and I got it on my page still. And Marty Fatante worked for Senator Casperson and said, man, you are spot on. I wasn't afraid to call it out. It needs totally replaced. The rest of the states don't have anything written like what we've got written. As far as the right to life endorsement that I have, that target is going to be on my back again. And there's nothing I can do, but I can say that the 24-hour rule and the life of the mother, an exception, is there. It's on the Right to Life of Michigan site. Go there and educate, see the education they have on there. The care clinic is a great alternative to women who find themselves in a crisis, pregnancy. I've been a supporter of them for a long time. 9 days of early voting is too much. Both Democrats and Republicans say so. Like I said, I'm a hard worker. I knocked doors during COVID. I got more stories. I got to write a book just on that. I've been threatened to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next closing statement will be by candidate Gerard.
Again, thank you all for being here. It's encouraging. It's one of the biggest crowds we've had in this room in quite a while. Over the 50 years that I've been doing this, I've worked with a lot of you as I look around the room, either socially, actually, in work relationships or in educational relationships. And you know me. You know what I do. You can look around Marquette Township and Marquette County and see what we do. I have worked diligently and constantly to resolve issues that the constituents have, to find ways to get done what they want done within a cost that's acceptable to them. And that is what I will take to Lansing, that ability to do that. I'm not afraid of challenges. I'm not afraid to fight when fight is necessary. And I've made the UP my home. Most of you don't know that I'm actually Canadian. I became a citizen in 1974. I had to go through the whole immigration process, even though I had a bachelor's degree from Northern Michigan University at the time. So what's going on with immigration is important to me, and it should be important to you because it will be here eventually. In any event, I ask for your support to go to Lansing to represent you, and only you, in deliberations with the House. Thank you.
Thank you. The next closing statement from candidate Mason.
Yes, thank you all for joining us tonight. Well, I'm not from the Market area, I'm from Baraga County, so most of you I don't know. But that's one of the reasons that I've spent my time knocking on thousands upon thousands of doors this election cycle. I did that to understand the needs of the community, to understand what affects Marquette, what affects Baraga, what affects the different segments of the 109th district. I've covered all 4 counties, and I've covered it every day. It takes me about 3.5 hours to get from one end to the other, but I do it every day. Something that's often missing in government policies is the unintended consequences they'll have on businesses or us, okay? In business, I was a business development manager. In business, I was forced to look at the total impact, how this impacted our company that I work for, whichever one it was, and how it impacted the customer or the country that I was dealing with. How it affected the marketplace. So how a new product would be received in the marketplace was huge. How it would affect the departments within our organization, say our engineering department or marketing department. I had to do all of that to determine, is this the right decision to make? With that, without that planning, things fail, okay? A company cannot run a business and survive if everything is not thought through. We have legislation that's passed on energy. It's not thought through. These are the skills I plan to bring to Lansing this fall.
Your time is up.
So please vote for me on August 6th.
Thank you. Thank you. The next closing statement will be from candidate Brum.
I once sat next to the great late Mike Plourd when we were both running for city commission in the city of Marquette. When he taught me that first forum, I've stayed with me ever since. In your concluding statement, you start with a 1-sentence statement. Please vote for me. These other people are very nice. I would be happy to take them out to dinner. Please vote for me, okay? You are special people. Number one, you're here, and that makes you special. I've been all over the world. I've never found tougher, more resilient, more innovative, more adaptable, more flexible, more full of guts people than in the Upper Peninsula. Some of us are born here, some of us come here by choice, but to stay here and thrive here, you have to be more than the average person. You're here tonight when you could be off having a good time. There's movies, there's dancing, there's all sorts of ways to have fun, and you're locked in a room here listening to me talking about septic tanks, which means you have an enduring quality of you want to know. You are not people I refer to as fussing on Facebook people. You come to the meetings, you listen, you learn, you make up your mind. So tomorrow, when most of you will get your absentee ballot and you mark Margaret Brum, vote for me, you will then send a note to your nearest and dearest that you voted for me, Margaret Brum, because I asked you to vote for me, and because I'm here now prepared to give everything I've got for the people of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I thank you for the opportunity to do so. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. The last closing statement is from candidate Hill.
Thank you very much. I'm going to use my loud voice because that's the voice I use when I represent us down in Lansing. Thank you for the opportunity to express my vision for the Upper Peninsula, a place where people of all ages can live, work, play, and thrive. We have an incredible opportunity ahead of us to build a more prosperous and resilient region. The UP can be powered by clean energy, clean water, and sustained by our dogged determination to innovate. But we're also at a crossroads. If we want to capitalize on the incredible opportunities in front of us, we can't rely on the same short-sighted leadership that left us behind in the past. As your state rep, I'm working every day to realize our potential. And I've lost my place. That means implementing new technologies that will help us reach full energy independence, so we can stop depending on foreign countries trading fossil fuels to do right by us, and we can start doing right by ourselves. It's ensuring that our natural resources are healthy and provide not only fun and recreation, but real sustainable livelihoods. It's fighting for the infrastructure support that past state leaders have refused to provide, and supporting sustainable, safe mining and logging. We need to attract talent, teachers, healthcare providers, builders, and more. And we must ensure the folks who live and work here can find housing, that they can afford to make a life here. When Governor Whitmer talks about helping families make it in Michigan, it's the legislature's job to bring that vision home. I want to help families make it in the UP. When I'm reelected, I'll continue fighting for the rights we expect as Americans, like the freedom to choose when, where, and how to start our families, and who we marry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This concludes our formal candidate forum for the 109th primary election. You anticipated me because I wanted to thank all of the candidates for participating and for taking this so seriously and being so prepared. I also want to thank all the volunteers who made this possible, from the AAUW as well as the League, Marquette Township and staff, Nick Steffi from Childcare Production, who's handled our beautiful sound. We of the League would like to remind the audience that if you found this forum informative and you believe that voter participation is not just a spectator sport, then we urge you to join us. The League of Women Voters is always open to new members of any gender. We would like to ask you to return your surveys if you kindly filled them out. We are going to have a time at these back tables for the candidates to meet and greet if they still have the energy as we start putting this room back together. If you want further information on the primary election, there's other things going on besides the 109th. Go to our online voter guide at vote411.org. Remember to vote at home, in early voting, or on the day, August 6th. Your vote is your voice. Thank you.
Not easy. We'll talk later.